Have you ever realized that from the second you open your eyes in the morning to the moment you fall asleep, your brain is constantly swallowing information, podcasts, news, audiobooks, and messages without a single minute of quiet?
I mean, we have become so terrified of our own empty minds that we are slowly suffocating our creativity with constant mental noise.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at information obesity.
Right, which is basically the underlying reason your brain feels perpetually heavy or, exhausted and foggy.
Exactly, even on days when you feel like you haven't actually accomplished much.
Yeah, those days are the worst.
So today our sources are breaking down the psychology of this modern consumption trap. We're looking at the invisible emotional toll of our overstimulated lives and this specific communication trap known as selective listening.
And we aren't just going to outline the problem here. We want to really dig into the exact neurological and psychological mechanisms behind why our brains get so exhausted.
Right, because once we understand the why, we can actually do something about it.
Exactly. We're going to walk through a highly practical framework from the research. It's a step-by-step guide to practicing what the experts call a cognitive fast to reclaim your mental space.
I love that. So let's start right at the beginning of the day. The morning routine.
Oh, boy.
You know the exact scenario. Your alarm goes off. You wake up, and before your feet even touch the floor, before you've even fully opened both eyes, your hand is like automatically reaching out for your phone in the dark.
Guilty as charged.
Right. And you instantly start checking messages, scanning headlines, looking at social media, reviewing work emails. By the time you actually stand up to go brush your teeth, the sources describe your brain as having already sat through a mandatory 2-hour business meeting.
Wow. And you feel that weight immediately, right?
Totally.
But what is so critical here is how we tend to misinterpret that heavy feeling. When you feel that slow, foggy resistance at like 7:30 in the morning, the immediate cultural instinct is self-blame.
Yeah, you tell yourself, I'm just being lazy today. I need more coffee. I just need to push harder.
Right. But if we look at the neurology of what is actually happening, your brain isn't lazy at all. It is already severely overstimulated.
Because of the sheer volume of data we've just forced it to process in bed.
Exactly. When you transition from sleep to wakefulness, your brain is moving through delicate brainwave states.
Mm-hmm.
And when you immediately jam highly stimulating input into it, like geopolitical news or complex social hierarchies on social media, demands from your boss, you are shocking the system.
You're asking your brain to process a day's worth of complex emotional data before you've even had a glass of water.
Precisely.
Trying to picture what the working memory is actually going through in that moment is just wild.
It really is.
Like imagine you were trying to hear a single person whisper a very important secret to you, but you are standing in the middle of a packed, roaring football stadium.
Oh, that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah. Tens of thousands of people are screaming, the stadium lights are flashing, the massive jumbotrons are playing loud, rapid-fire advertisements.
It's total chaos.
Right. And your brain is trying so hard to focus on that one single whisper on the field, which represents your actual original thoughts or, your personal priorities for the day.
But it can't hear it.
No, it's entirely drowned out by the deafening stadium noise of your digital input.
That visual captures the biological reality of cognitive bandwidth perfectly. I mean, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for focus and decision-making, has a finite capacity.
It's not an infinite hard drive.
Exactly. When you flood it with all those notifications and alerts, you are filling every single seat in that stadium. The brain has to use physical, metabolic energy to process every single one of those inputs.
It has to categorize them and decide if they represent a threat or a reward.
Right. And eventually it hits a biological wall. It simply cannot process any more data, so it just waves a white flag of surrender. It shuts the door.
But wait, if our brains are waving a white flag, if they're like biologically begging for mercy and shutting the door on new information, why is our instinct to immediately feed them more noise?
It's a paradox, isn't it?
It really is. Think about the end of the day. You get home from work, your brain is totally fried, and instead of sitting in quiet, you go sit on the couch, turn on a TV show, and simultaneously scroll through apps on your phone.
Yeah, the classic double screening.
Right. Why do we run toward more distraction when we are already that exhausted?
Well, the sources point to a fascinating adaptation called emotional inflation.
Yeah.
We are essentially drinking from a fire hose of distraction.
Okay, emotional inflation. How does that work?
So, from an evolutionary standpoint, human beings were not designed to process hundreds of highly stimulating novel events every single hour. But today, we live with the volume of life turned up to the absolute maximum.
Why everything is extreme.
Yeah, and when you constantly bombard your dopamine system with high stimulus input, bright colors, breaking news, dramatic entertainment, your baseline for what registers as stimulating just gets pushed higher and higher.
So it operates just like inflation in a real economy.
Exactly.
Like, if a central bank prints way too much money and floods the market, the value of a single dollar drops. In this case, because there is so much extreme stimulation flooding your nervous system, the emotional value of a single experience drops.
Precisely. The brain physically cannot sustain the heightened heart rate and intense neurological firing required to react to that fire hose of data.
Because it would just burn out.
It would literally kill you from stress. So, to protect itself, the brain adapts by shrinking the value of each moment. Let's look at the classic example from the sources scrolling late at night.
Oh, the doom scroll.
Right. You might swipe through 100 beautifully produced travel videos or 100 supposedly hilarious comedy clips, but you don't actually laugh out loud at a single one.
You don't feel genuine awe at the travel footage either.
No, you just feel blank.
The 100 video numbness. You're just flicking your thumb, staring at the screen, and you feel entirely hollow. Joy just turns into this fuzzy static in the background.
And here is the crucial takeaway that shifts how we view this. That blank, numb feeling is not a character defect.
It's not.
No, it is a biological defense mechanism. Your brain is actively suppressing your capacity to feel, because if you actually fully process the emotional weight and nuance of 100 different videos in 10 minutes, your nervous system would completely overload.
Wow. So the numbness is your brain deploying a shield to protect you from the overwhelming noise you are forcing upon it.
Exactly.
But wait, I need to stop you there and push back a little, because this raises a huge question about the type of content we consume.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, what if the stadium noise isn't cat videos or reality TV? What if it's educational content? Let's say I am listening to a dense audiobook on astrophysics while I'm answering work emails, and maybe I have an educational documentary playing in the background.
The productivity trap.
Right. Isn't that self-improvement? Does the brain differentiate between high-quality learning and junk food content?
Well, it differentiates in terms of long-term utility, absolutely. But in terms of immediate cognitive load, no. It causes the exact same cognitive fatigue.
Wait, really? Even if it's super educational?
Yes. This is a trap a lot of highly ambitious people fall into. They think that because the content is smart, it doesn't count as noise.
I've definitely thought that.
Most people do. But processing complex information requires intense metabolic energy. The brain still has to decode the audio, parse the complex meaning of the astrophysics, and figure out how to store that data.
And if you are doing that while scanning emails and keeping half an eye on a documentary, your focus shatters.
Exactly. Focus is a delicate muscle that requires singular attention to function properly.
So even if the content is top tier, the delivery method, like the multitasking and the sheer volume, completely ruins the value of it.
Yep. When you overload that muscle with too many complex inputs at once, your physical body might be resting quietly on the couch, but mentally your brain is just buffering.
Buffering, like a bad internet connection.
Exactly, like a high-definition video struggling to load on a terrible connection. It gets stuck in a perpetual state of processing and never actually rests and recovers.
But because its attention is so divided, it never actually absorbs the astrophysics either.
Yeah, exactly.
The buffering brain. That describes the physical sensation perfectly. It's when you open the refrigerator and stare at the shelves with no idea what you are looking for.
Or when you have to reread the same paragraph in a book 5 times because none of the words are sticking.
Yes. And what's really alarming is when you realize this internal buffering doesn't just stay internal, it spills over and begins to ruin how we connect with the people around us.
This is where the internal cost becomes a severe interpersonal cost.
Because it affects our relationships.
Right. The sources highlight a concept called selective listening, and it is directly tied to this overstimulated buffering state.
Meaning we stop actually hearing people.
Yeah. Because our brains are so overloaded and have become so desperate for constant rapid-fire stimulation, we are literally losing the ability to truly listen to another human being speak at a normal, unedited pace.
Right, because human speech is incredibly slow compared to scrolling through a curated feed.
It is.
Like, if you are sitting across the dinner table from a friend and they're telling you about a stressful day at work, their story isn't highly edited. There are pauses, tangents, and hesitations.
There's no background music telling you how to feel.
Exactly. And for an overstimulated brain, that slowness feels agonizing.
Your brain craves high-density data. So while the other person is speaking, your brain starts looking for another job to do to keep itself entertained.
Which is just awful.
It is. The sources point out that instead of listening, our brains furiously start building our next brilliant response or constructing a defense if we feel even slightly challenged by what the person is saying.
We end up treating the conversation like a debate to win or a puzzle to solve, rather than an actual opportunity to connect.
It's deeply tragic, honestly. We are formulating our replies before the other person has even finished their sentence.
Because we are entirely trapped in our own heads.
Right. Managing our own mental clutter and preparing our counter-arguments, so we completely miss what the other person is actually trying to share with us.
We miss the subtle drop in their tone of voice or the vulnerability in their eyes, the actual nuance of their problem.
It becomes the illusion of a conversation. We are physically present in the room, but cognitively, we are 100 miles away.
So how do we fix a communication trap that is born out of our digital exhaustion?
Well, the antidote, according to the sources, requires deliberately fighting that urge for speed. It is active listening.
Which means consciously turning off your internal monologue.
Right. You have to force yourself to sit in the discomfort of a slow, unedited human interaction. You just hear the person, validate their experience, and practice true empathy without immediately jumping in to fix their problem.
Or center the conversation back on yourself.
Exactly. But here's the catch. You cannot offer that kind of deep empathy if your brain is constantly buffering from all the noise.
Right. You have to clear the buffer first. You have to get rid of the noise. Which brings us to the mechanics of how we get trapped in the first place.
Yes. And to fight this modern trap, we have to properly identify it.
Right. We need the vocabulary. So let's actually take a quick word tour of our digital lives, weaving together terms from the sources. Because when we can name these psychological states, we gain the power to break the cycle.
Language is incredibly powerful here. Let's trace how these concepts actually unfold in a real-world scenario.
Okay, imagine you are a professional. You sit down at your desk, open your laptop, and log into LinkedIn. Your intent is purely functional.
You just want to research the background of a client you're pitching to later that afternoon.
Exactly. That is a clear, bounded task.
Right. But the architecture of platforms like that isn't designed to let you just do one bounded task. It's designed to capture and hold your attention.
So before you even reach the search bar, you're hit with a notification.
It's a post from a rival company complaining about a new industry trend.
And you flick it. Then you read the comments, which are highly polarized. You get annoyed by someone's terrible take. You click on their profile to see who they are.
And suddenly, 30 minutes have completely vanished. You started with a simple goal, but you fell straight down a digital rabbit hole.
The digital rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And the result of that rabbit hole is what the sources call our next term, information overload.
Right, which directly creates mental clutter.
Because now, instead of just thinking about your client pitch, your working memory is carrying the weight of that industry argument.
Plus an ad you saw for software, plus a message from a colleague you forgot to reply to.
All of those open loops take up physical space in your brain. That is the mental clutter. It's the noise in the stadium.
And when that clutter builds up, it causes the next phenomenon on our tour. It begins to suffocate you.
And we brought this word up at the very beginning of the deep dive. But it's not just a dramatic metaphor, is it?
No, not at all. Emotionally and creatively, the constant influx of heavy, fragmented input slowly suffocates your ability to produce an original thought.
Because creativity requires space.
Exactly. It requires the brain's default mode network to activate, which only happens when the brain is resting and wandering.
So when you are suffocating under a mountain of digital noise, your brain literally lacks the empty space, like the oxygen required to connect two disparate ideas and be creative.
So the ultimate goal here isn't just to arbitrarily use fewer apps. It's an active, intentional process to reclaim your focus.
Reclaim. That's a great word for it.
You have to forcefully take back your attention from the algorithm so you can finally achieve the last term on our tour, Mental clarity.
Mental clarity. That state where your brain is no longer buffering, where the stadium is quiet, and you can actually hear your own thoughts again.
Exactly. And that active process of reclaiming your attention is what the sources refer to as a cognitive fast.
Okay, so a cognitive fast. Let's get into the practical execution of this. Because just telling someone to, put your phone down never actually works.
No, it doesn't.
How do we actually do a cognitive fast?
It fundamentally starts with prioritizing quality over massive quantity. Mentally strong people don't just optimize their output, they fiercely guard their input.
Oh, that makes sense.
We are so obsessed with productivity hacks, how to write faster, work longer, produce more. But true mental clarity comes from limiting what you let into your brain in the first place. Less noise equals more peace.
So, practically speaking, if you are trying to learn a new skill, instead of trying to watch 50 random educational videos a day on double speed, you limit your input.
Right. You choose one home base.
Like one specific book or a single deep dive on a topic.
Yes. And you engage with it deeply and slowly. The sources emphasize that repetition relaxes the brain.
Because you aren't constantly switching formats.
Exactly. When you aren't shifting from video to text to audio, your nervous system stops treating the incoming information like a chaotic threat. It can actually calm down and absorb the material.
So that stops the emotional inflation moving forward.
Yeah.
But we still have to deal with the massive backlog of clutter that is already spinning around in your head.
Yeah, the open loops. For that, the sources offer a deeply effective nighttime routine called the mental load dump.
The mental load dump. How does that work?
Well, before you go to bed, you step entirely away from all screens. You take a physical paper notebook and a pen, and you write down every single lingering task, every vague anxiety, and every random idea that is floating in your mind.
You just empty it completely onto the page.
You get it all out.
I love that. It's almost like clearing the RAM on a computer.
Oh, that's exactly what it is.
Like if your computer has 30 heavy background applications running all at once, the system slows down to a crawl, the fan is spinning incredibly loud, and the battery is just draining.
Right, and it won't go to sleep properly.
Exactly. The mental load dump is like forcing those background applications to close. You are clearing the RAM so the system can finally rest and sleep deeply.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it, because the physical act of writing is key here. It forces your brain to slow down to the physical speed of your hand, rather than the frantic, frictionless speed of a scrolling feed.
And once the RAM is cleared out, you can actually power down.
Which prepares you perfectly for the final and undoubtedly most difficult step of a cognitive fast.
Right.
Yeah.
10 minutes of silence.
Just 10 minutes a day. The instruction from the experts is to simply exist in silence.
Which sounds terrifying.
It really does. You can go for a walk outside, but strictly without your headphones. No music, no audiobooks, no calls. Or you can just sit by a window and watch the world outside.
It sounds incredibly simple. Almost too simple to be effective.
But for a brain that is conditioned to a constant fire hose of stimulation, it feels agonizing at first.
Oh, I can completely attest to that. The first time I tried just sitting on a bench without pulling out my phone, my brain was practically screaming at me.
What are you doing?
Yes, check your email, look at the news, what if someone texted you? You feel this actual physical withdrawal, this desperate, itchy craving for dopamine.
It's intense.
The first few minutes are just pure panic, followed by intense boredom. It is deeply uncomfortable to realize how addicted you are to just being distracted from your own mind.
And that discomfort is the literal withdrawal from the noise. You have to expect it. But if you can sit through that initial panic and boredom, something profound happens around minute 7 or 8.
The dust settles?
Exactly. The dust settles. When the background music of everyone else's opinions, anxieties, and entertainment finally fades out, your real original voice returns.
Wow.
You suddenly remember what you actually think about your life rather than just regurgitating what an algorithm told you to think 20 seconds ago.
That is such a crucial realization to arrive at.
Oh, God.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to say this directly to you, the listener.
It's so important.
Your brain is a beautiful, highly sensitive instrument. It is meant to imagine, to solve complex problems, and to experience deep, resonant joy. It is not a garbage bin for endless digital noise.
Definitely not.
It is perfectly okay to close the tabs. It is entirely okay to step away from the fire hose and say no to the constant input. You have permission to let your brain rest.
And as you think about how to apply this cognitive fast to your own life, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
We spend so much time worrying about what we are missing out on when we put our phones away. But considering how constant consumption numbs our joy and ruins our conversations, what if the most radical, creative, and rebellious act you can do in the modern world isn't producing or consuming more content, but simply having the discipline to sit in a quiet room and actively listen to nothing at all?
That is powerful. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for being here.
Tomorrow morning, before the 2-hour meeting in your head begins, before you check a single message, try giving your mind just 10 minutes of quiet. Let your brain finally wake up empty. We will see you next time.